Hello, beloved soul, and welcome to the Spiritual Support Crew, the podcast dedicated to supporting all light workers, starseeds, psychics, healers, and all helper souls incarnated on Earth in these interesting times. I'm your host, Helen Crosby, and as we move past the shortest day and into January, the coldest time of the year is here in the Northern Hemisphere, and things appear to be becoming very dark, and in more ways than one. But today I do have a message of hope and positivity for the new year, because despite the doom and gloom portrayed by the media, my spirit guides actually assure me that the light is returning to this plane, and fast. Now, by light, I don't just mean the spectrum we experience as visible light that allows us to see things in our perceived reality. I'm referring to the light of awareness that's currently being returned to us as a species, as a human race. It's an illumination of sorts, which is bringing some big shifts for many of us, sudden realizations and profound feelings of knowing and remembering that we're all one with the divine presence, and that there is no separation between us and what you might call God or Source. A dark shadow was cast over this world many thousands of years ago, and that shadow led us to believe that we were small, insignificant, that we didn't matter. It told us we were separate from the divine, that we were somehow less than, and certainly not good enough. And we stood in that shadow, shivering and unsure of ourselves, many no longer able to see the light or even remember its existence. But this year marks the end of the reign of shadow, and my guides tell me that we will see the beginning of the light returning in earnest in 2021. Many of us have actually had glimpses of it so far, especially in the past couple of decades. But this is the time when the shining light of truth and knowledge will become so glaringly obvious that nobody will be able to miss it unless they choose to. That might sound strange. After all, who would want to lie to themselves? But actually, you'd be surprised. Many people live in denial of many things, and our ego mind, the monkey mind that thinks it's so clever and so important, struggles with concepts that it can't understand or name, or worse, that threaten to make it obsolete altogether. Earth is a free will zone, so everyone has the right to make their choices, and not every soul is ready to remember who they are right now, and that's okay. But for those of us who are ready to make that shift, it's going to become a lot easier this year as we receive what my guides are describing as a super boost of spiritual energy, which will cause many to awaken spontaneously and unexpectedly. Whilst I think it's fair to say that we are definitely not out of the woods yet as a human species, the very fact that the dark powers are desperate to modify our DNA in order to retain their control over us and are upping their attempts to frighten or shame people into compliance and confusion is proof of their desperation. These are the last-ditch attempts of a despotic overlord trying to hang on to their throne by their broken and bloody fingernails. They're refusing to back down or give up because they know their backs are against the wall, and they're praying that the majority of us don't notice. After all, we are a mostly peaceful and obedient species, easily led and always happy to try to please and do as we're told. We like to think that we're helping others, so the psychological operations at play are designed to prey on those instincts. We are also powerful manifestors, as I've mentioned before. And in the past, we've been all too easily tricked into manifesting the future against our own best interests, or in the name of some greater good, out of fear. But fear doesn't exist for a fully realized human being. When you're able to remember just who you are on that deep inner level of knowing, fear is no longer part of the equation. And if you have nothing to fear, you can no longer be controlled. And that is what they are terrified of. The metaphorical light of illumination that I keep referring to is the reawakening of the being. It's when we finally remember who we really are, when we see that there really is no separation because we can feel it. It goes beyond words and descriptions. Most of us aren't quite there yet, although some of us are lucky enough to have had glimpses of it, including myself. The enlightenment experience that I had in 2020 only served to make me more determined and gave me the insight I needed to hang on in there while world started to change in all the terrible ways we've witnessed the past year. More and more of us will be having those experiences following on from the solar eclipse on the 14th of December and into 2021, and that makes me very excited. A flash of enlightenment can teach you more than reading 1,000 books and meditating for 100 years. It's a knowing, but also a remembering, so the knowledge feels comfortable, familiar, and slots back into your consciousness with ease. I'm happy to report there is absolutely nothing to fear, and it's a truly wonderful experience. On a personal level, I'm actually looking forward to getting back to that state of perfect oneness and being able to stay there once and for all. I can feel the anticipation of the changes. The world's energy is shifting around like a small animal in a cage, muscles tensed, ready to burst forward out of the door the second it lifts, and it will, quite noticeably now as we move into the beginning of 2021. This episode of the podcast took me longer to write than previous ones, and I actually started writing it in early December before the solar eclipse on the 14th. It's as though the turbulent energy of that grand celestial event stopped me in my tracks, so I wasn't able to finish this episode until all the energetic dust had started to settle. And now that it has, I can see that a veil has been lifted from all of us. Moving forward into next year, we will be able to see much more clearly the road ahead of us on a practical and a spiritual level too. The eclipse brought such an energy shift that I felt able to finally write up a forecast report of my predictions for the coming year, which you can find on my website. The title is Discovering the Authentic Self, because that is the theme for 2021. If you're lucky enough to be a member of my mailing list, you might have already received a free copy of it as a Christmas present. If you're not a member of the mailing list, you're very welcome to join. I'll put the link in the show notes along with everything else I've mentioned in this episode. Authenticity and remembering the true self is going to be the theme of this coming year and beyond, and that's what I mean when I refer to the light returning. We will finally start to see ourselves as we truly are and understand the wondrous eternity of our being and our integral connection to everyone and everything else in the universe. It's not going to be an easy path, that's for sure, but it will be worth it. And that's the message of hope and the coming of a positive future for all of us that I want you to remember, no matter what this year has to throw at us. If you're a sensitive or intuitive, then chances are you're already feeling as though you've been unblocked or that something has shifted in you in the last week or so. Clients have reported to me that they suddenly feel raring to go and ready to begin new projects in their lives, at work, or that they feel they suddenly want to move house. We will certainly be able to gain more traction as the months go on, which will be a welcome release after the experience of 2020, which felt very much like we were spinning our wheels for most of the year. It's important to note that 2021 will not just bring us a quick and easy solution without our participation and willingness to make changes. We could still dig ourselves into a bit of a hole and delay our progress if we're not acting from a place of consciousness. Whilst our spiritual growth is currently underway, it will happen in different ways for different people. We should not expect to have everything handed to us either. For sure, some people will unexpectedly find themselves experiencing enlightenment or an awakening from the depths of despair and suffering, and sometimes that is the only way that certain people can get there. The path is a different one for each of us though, so it's still prudent to be actively working towards manifesting the new and hopeful world we desire. I would recommend that each of us continue or even increase our spiritual practice, whether it's prayer, meditation, yoga, ritual, self-healing, or whatever you feel most drawn to right now. Adding to the light by consciously increasing it can only help. And by shining your light more brightly, you can help to guide the way for those who are still unconscious, sleepwalking along in unfulfilled or unhappy lives filled with pain and uncertainty. When we engage in any sort of spiritual practice, we light up like a Christmas tree in the etheric realms, and this makes us a beacon for the soul still bumping around in the dark. Psychic protection is probably more important than ever before, so make sure you're grounding, clearing, and shielding your energy daily or more if you need to. You may also notice that you begin certain practices or take certain actions intuitively without needing to be taught how. This phenomenon will certainly increase as we move into the new energy and will help to increase our individual confidence and belief in our divine spiritual nature as we remember who we are. Now, I'm also aware that many people are experiencing very vivid dreams at the moment, me included. And I think this may increase in frequency in the coming weeks and maybe beyond. I would encourage anyone experiencing this to note down their dreams or keep a dream diary to try and keep track. Many of these dreams contain messages from the higher realms and can bring us foresight, guidance, and new ideas for our everyday lives. Helper souls are also experiencing a lot of fatigue on waking at the moment, so you may feel as though your sleep isn't as refreshing as you'd like it to be or normally expect it to be. This is because many of us are actually doing very important work in other realms at night during our sleep state. This has happened to me on quite a few occasions recently, but I've noticed that my guides are careful not to wear me out and ensure that it doesn't continue for an exhaustingly long number of days at a time. If you are getting tired, I suggest you have a word with your spirit guides or your angels. Ask them to dial things back a bit if you're starting to feel overworked by nighttime soul exploits. Lastly, I'm also guided to mention that this year will be a year of working very much from the heart chakra, so wearing green and holding or carrying green-coloured crystals will be particularly helpful as we prepare for the coming year. Changes in how we work, how the economy operates, and how each of us behaves will start to reflect the heightening of the heart energy, and we will start to see the beginnings of the empathy economy emerging. Those working to increase the light and to assist with the ascension of mankind will be doing a lot of work from the heart chakra on a spiritual level too. We should note that the dark forces are actually aware of all of this, because anything that we can sense, they can tune into as well. Those of them who are actively working against us next year will actually be pretending to come from the heart. So it will be up to us to use discernment and look at what is truly loving and kind, and what actions or people are just manipulating us whilst acting as though they have the higher moral ground. Notice who uses the word kindness, compassion, empathy, but doesn't really seem to demonstrate it. Authenticity is going to be the key in 2021. But thankfully, when the emperor has no clothes on, everybody notices and somebody speaks up sooner or later.